good suggestion.
Because otherwise it just sounds like it's too open to moving your amplifier around in this place.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, hi.
I'm Sharon McCubbin, and I just was going to say that I don't understand what the confusion is about what's in the permit. I have not read the permit, but I do know that the 10 p.m. is a law in the county, and so it just wouldn't be an issue as far as I know.
Totally.
Like, for instance, my husband books a lot of music up at the Rio, and it all ends at 10, period. It really does.
Yeah, so that's what'll happen. Yeah, I think films might have a different thing because it's just films, but I agree. Any kind of live amplified sound is going to be great. Yeah, hi. And then we'll go back to that.
My name's Andrea Van Dyke. I've lived here since 1979. And when I first moved here, and I've raised 2 children here, and I do not ever want to minimize the effects of alcohol use on our community. We all know what that's been like. But I really don't think it has anything to do with what specific events being offered at the time. But when I first moved in, I remember a long tradition of outdoor performances at the amphitheater. Steve Martin and various comedians came through in the 70s, the 60s. And it's only in the summer, obviously, that works. And with all the protections in place after 10 p.m. amplified music, I think that would be a nice thing to bring back to Monterey as part of the summer offerings of things. And then I want to address later the whole other issue about the agency and the inside.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Seth. Been in the community close to 40 years, and I would also like to second what you were saying, is that there is this long tradition and history of performance, of gathering, not just of the people in the community, but people from outside the community. I mean, that's how this whole area developed after all the trees got cut down, is they're like, oh, property's cheap, it's next to the river, we'll have summer communities. And it was based on that culture, and it's nice to see a revival to it too. But also I want to speak to your concerns too, about the language of the permit, is that if you prematurely limit the language and parameters, then you have those inherent limitations. But some of the language that I'm hearing too is that perhaps this is a definitive meeting, which I don't think is the case, is that there'll be this ongoing feedback loop between the community and the venue. And so to keep that in mind, is that nothing is really definitive, in each of these aspects. And if enough people are disturbed by how crazy Colin is and how wild his parties are, which I'm not picking up from you. I'm not really picking that up. You seem fairly civilized. I just wanted to mention that as an issue of perspective, is that this seems like it's the beginning of an ongoing back and forth, that feedback loop. And I'm quite frankly very excited to keep West County vibrant, in the sense that it offers something that you can't get anywhere else. And it has to do with cultural acceptance of we're all a different brand of weirdo out here, some more conservative, some more loose or whatever, but the fact that we can all kind of coexist and have these central venues where we can kind of celebrate those differences, and that's what I'm seeing here. So anyways, I just wanted to point that out.
So you wanted to respond?
Oh, just that I understand what he's saying, that I am concerned about the broadness of it, because it can be interpreted different ways. And as a correlation for today, perfect example, everybody knows that it's illegal to park within 15 feet of a fire hydrant, yes? Well, I almost couldn't get it enforced in front of my house because they said there's not a sign, there's not a fire lane, there's not an actual curb. So even if you say, well, it says a 10 p.m. ordinance, that can be misinterpreted too.
Yeah, which is why I think actually it's more important to have the integrity of the relationships and the conversations among all of us. I actually think that ultimately what it says in your thing, that's the law, but people aren't doing it. So really it's about the behavior and the culture of the place and the people who are shaping it. But that's ultimately going to enforce who we are and what we do and what we don't do. And I do think that it's important to be explicit. So I appreciate your feedback.
And just one other thing, and I'm sorry to be taking so much time, but I live way across the So,
In the back.
you know, I don't want to hear that every day.
Yeah, of course, and there's no danger of it happening every day outside. Like, it won't happen ever facing this permanent outside. Only inside the theater. So if you don't hear the films every day, then you won't hear what's happening inside. Karen.
I just want to kind of point out that we have this proposal in front of us that comes with a wide spectrum of potential community-oriented events. And I keep hearing people go to the potential possibility of an extreme bit of chaos. I find that, so we should not do any of that based on the possibility that sometime down the road there might be something that is offensive. And I don't know, I just don't think that we can assume the worst up from the get-go. Because you can do that in any situation. You can look at any law, you can look at any situation, and you can absolutely assume the worst and assume chaos will ensue. But the people that run this place and the people that live in this area, ideally, are a community, and we're working together as a community to try to make this place better and feel more like a community. And I live here, I work here, and so, you know, this idea that we should get on because we're afraid that 5 years from now a new owner might put sound outside or whatever, I personally don't find that terribly useful. And the assumption that those of us that work here would be so irresponsible as to let people go wrong and then wander outside